Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic, creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host. I'm recording on a beautiful, sunny Friday evening in Reykjavik, Iceland. Only yesterday, I woke up to a field of snow. It is gone, it is sunny. Summer is, I guess, here. Iceland likes to do these little bait and switches with you when it comes to summer, but the sun is streaming in through the windows. People are out and about in the streets, but me, I'm going to record a podcast. I'm going to talk about an interesting game. It's a game that I passed up upon its original release. I was interested in the crazy-looking art style of this one and the concept. It's a point-and-click where you have to infiltrate a nightclub with a great soundtrack. It's a pure indie game, a solo dev game. But I saw a review of it that put me off a little bit, and so I didn't play it. But then it went ahead and it won the Seamus McNally Grand Prize at the IGF Festival, which is part of GDC out in San Francisco. And a lot of good games have won that award, and it certainly perked my ears up. So I went back and I picked it up on Steam, as I'm sure a lot of people did. And I'm really glad that I did. It's a really fun and interesting game. It's a good fit for this podcast. It's a very strange take on the classic point-and-click genre, and it is Betrayal at Club Low. So that's going to be the featured game of the episode. But as is customary on the show, I think I will start off by talking about a couple of other bits and pieces, a little bit of housekeeping. I guess the biggest release of the last week and of the last couple months maybe is Jedi Survivor. I forget the name of these things. It's a Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I guess is the full title. A lot of people are talking about that game. It looks absolutely beautiful. I am a real sucker for Star Wars. I'm like a first generation Star Wars appreciator. It's like built into my childhood. We watched the trilogy, the original trilogy of movies endlessly until the VHS tapes were worn and old. So I'm always a bit of a sucker for Star Wars, and I think for Star Wars fans, it's been a bit of a rough time when it comes to mainline stuff. Wasn't a big fan of the last trilogy, but I did really like Andor, and I would say that Fallen Order, whilst it has its flaws, was one of the best Star Wars things, one of the best things made in that universe, up until like Mandalorian and Andor, basically. I think it's a better Star Wars experience than the mainline films gave us in the last trilogy. So I've been interested in playing Survivor. I've been watching the reviews keenly, and it's had some pretty good reviews actually. A lot of 8s, a lot of 9s. I think it's a mid-80s on Metacritic. But before I dived into it, I decided to go back and play a little bit of Fallen Order. Some of the folks in the Gaming in the Wild Discord and elsewhere let me know that the ending of Fallen Order is really something. And I was about, I would say, a third of the way through that game on my first playthrough. It got a bit tricky for me at the time. This is like a couple of years ago. This is pre-Elden Ring. So I thought I would go back into it and see if the get-good power that is now flowing through my veins after having done like 70 hours of Elden Ring would help me out playing Fallen Order. And so it was really fun to go back into it, and I have to say the cinematic opening of that game is just really, really something. You're in a giant Imperial scrapyard with Star Destroyers littering a torn landscape, and you are a fleeing, promising Jedi novice who is undercover, hiding their identity. Cal Kestis is the name of the character, the red-headed Jedi that is the star of this EA series. And it was great, actually. And I think I have definitely come on a little bit as a gamer since the first time that I played it. There are a few problems in this game that I did pick up on again in my second playthrough, such as, in a lot of open world games or third-person action-adventure games, they put these giant splashes of yellow paint on anything that you can climb on or pass through or interact with as you're moving through the landscape. This game doesn't do that, and I think that a lot of folks will maybe like that, but there is a downside to it, and that is that you don't always know where you're supposed to go. There are handrails that you can climb onto and kind of monkey your way along. There are ledges that you can clamber up, climbable surfaces. And because it's such a beautiful environment, that can get a little lost in the clutter. I do remember the first time that I came through it on the opening train sequence. There was a moment where I was like, I've got no idea what I'm supposed to do. I was jumping at walls, jumping at rails. And it happened again this time, but I think that little inkling in the back of my mind from the last playthrough reminded me that I can clamber around the edge of the train carriage. But I've played through the first opening intro cinematic sequence. I've played through the first planet. I'm finding the combat a lot easier than I did last time. The parrying seems actually quite generous on the base difficulty, so I think I'm going to have a second swing at Fallen Order. It is one of those games that has an unexpected Dark Souls influence. Enemies respawn when you reach these little meditation points, and the combat is a lot about parrying, so it has a bit of a slightly tricky style of combat, slightly slippery. I would say for all the From fans out there, it's nothing at all. But for people that like third-person action adventures, the Horizons and Zeldas and Witchers and Cyberpunks of this world, although Cyberpunk is first-person, of course, this one is a bit more tricky. It definitely leans into that From universe a little bit. It's a different attitude to combat, a different moveset. You have to be on your guard, you have to be ready to parry, you have to be ready to roll, spotting cues from enemies. But I'm flying through it. I'm already in the third world now, and I've just had one session, so I think I'm going to try and play my way through Jedi Fallen Order, see if I can get through it this time, see if I can make that difficult map make a little more sense to me, and if I like it, if I enjoy it, if I get to that ending that everyone is talking about, then I will pick up Jedi Survivor. So I think Fallen Order is a good little... I really had to battle my hype instincts not to just go and grab Survivor straight away, but I managed to do that. I do have Fallen Order sitting there, and I am enjoying it, so that's where I'm at with the Jedi games. I also played a little bit of Storyteller this week, and I was planning to make an episode on it. It would have been a bit of a bummer episode, though. I wasn't really feeling the game. It's that game where you have to organize different story elements into a comic strip style manuscript. For example, if you're a prince, you can drag in the princess. If you have a gravestone, you can drag the princess onto the gravestone and then drag the prince into the frame, and he will become the grieving prince. And you have these little objectives that you have to make happen by arranging elements within those frames. It's pretty simple. It's a very simple game. There is no character to the characters. It's a puzzle game through and through. And I was having medium fun with it, I would say. But I definitely ran aground a little bit. I wasn't feeling very enthusiastic about finishing the game. So I didn't want to do 2 negative reviews in a row after I did Tron Legacy last week. I wanted to at least try and find a game that I'm enthusiastic about to talk about. I like to try and keep the podcast upbeat, and I like to talk about games that I'm recommending to you. And so I was very, very happy when I just picked up Betrayal at Club Low one evening, played through the whole thing in 2 sittings, had a great time with it. So I have a good game to talk about with you today. I think I will have another swing at Storyteller, try and play it at different times, in different moods, see if I can find my way into the game before I review it for you. I did also add one game to the playlist. I got a code for Minabo, A Walk Through Life, a very strange-looking little turnipy life sim game. It's on the Switch and a few other places as well. It's a decision-based game where you have to choose what is going to happen in your life, go through the life cycle of these weird white radishy turnip guys. Very intriguing, very funny concept. So I've added that to my 2 playlist. Also, I've added The Curious Case of Benedict Fox, the hyped Lovecraft-inspired Metroidvania that just dropped on Game Pass this week. So, lots to play. I'm actually having a great time with Jedi, so that might soak up my weekend. I will see how I get on. I will report back on that game. And maybe Minabo or Benedict Fox or Storyteller might show up on next week's episode. But before we get into the review, let me just say a big thank you to the show's newest patron, Julia from New Zealand. Thank you very much to Julia for signing up to be a patron of the show. It is a patron-supported show. We've just passed 40 patrons, which is a really nice landmark. When I get to 50, we're going to do something special. And as a new patron, Julia will get instant access to 10 bonus episodes to the Discord server, where all of the patrons of the show talk every day about what we're playing, what's coming up, what's on our minds. It's a really friendly little corner of the internet. It's my favourite place to talk about games. I'm in there every single day. I learn about a lot of new games through there, and I think we all do. At the minute, people are talking about Dredge, people are talking about Chia, Some people are looking forward to Jedi Survivor. Benedict Fox's big news in there as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what people think of that. If you would like to support the show and come and join us and get those bonus episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gaminginthewild from as little as $1 a month or £1 or €1. I will put a link to that in the show notes. And a big thank you to all of the show's existing patrons, and thank you to you if that sounds like something you might do. And with that said, let's move on and talk about this really interesting little game, Betrayal at Club Low. So Betrayal at Club Low came out in September of 2022. It was developed and published by a solo developer called Cosmo D, who makes surreal, musically driven narrative adventure games according to their profiles. It came out on Mac, PC and Linux. I played it on a Mac via Steam. It was clean and bug-free. My MacBook ran it fine, and it was really good to play with a mouse, as point and clicks tend to be, or any cursor-based games. Metacritic has it at 83% from 12 reviews. How Long to Beat has it at 3 hours. And the developer describes it by saying, "Tonight you're on a rescue mission, infiltrating a nightclub that was once a coffin factory. Will you succeed? Will you fail? Or will your night take an unexpected detour? Roll the pizza dice and find out." And I took that from the Steam page, but there's a really funny description of this pinned to Cosmo D's Twitter, where they say, "Nightclub infiltration, tabletop RPG inspiration, pizza dice, vibe," which I think is a really, really good and funny description of the game. And I have to say that this one is an oddball point and click that feels held together with scotch tape, but in a good way. Betrayal at Club Low melds weird storytelling, a loopy scenario, and a compelling tabletop dice roll skill check system into a future cult classic. And I didn't know about Cosmo D before this game, so it's interesting to actually look back through Cosmo D's catalogue and find out who they are exactly, because they kind of feel like a video game auteur, a little bit like Blender Games or something like that. Cosmo D is a solo developer with a super distinctive style and vision, very, very music focused. They are also a musician, and they made the music for the game. And they've got some interesting games in their back catalogue that I think I'm going to have to go and look at. The first one that is of significance seems to be called Saturn V, that came out in 2014, which Cosmo has described as a mood board. They have a game called Off Peak, where you're trapped in a train station. They have a game called The Norwood Suite, where you're trapped in a weird holiday resort exploring. And a game called Tales from Off Peak City. And this seems to be the breakthrough point to some degree. This one was nominated at IGF, and there's some press coverage about Tales from Off Peak City that you can look at. And Betrayal at Club Low was a follow-up to that game, and that went on to win. It won the Seamus McNally Grand Prize, as I have mentioned. And I can kind of see why. I mean, if it's voted on by game developers who have seen everything, kind of, and look at games in a very specific way, then something that is as kind of spicy and odd as this game, and Inscription, which won it last year, which is another pretty spicy, pretty odd game that really pulls the rug out from under your feet. This game is super oddball. And I think that that's down partially to the kind of the motifs of Cosmo D as a developer. There are skulls everywhere. There is iconography of pizzas and neon and trash. Many-sided dice seem to have been popping up in Cosmo D's games since way before you were actually rolling them. They've just been around. Like tabletop imagery is part of the Cosmo D multiverse, and jagged polygon graphics that look like they're maybe from like the kind of PS1 era trend that was going around, games like Paratopic and that sort of thing. Sort of jagged polygons with textures stretched over them, resources that look like they were pulled from asset packs, really funny textures, and everything looking like a strangely assembled collage. It has like this millennial video games aesthetic from around the year 2000, but it also has a real strong vibe pushed into it as well. It's like this urban swamp of digital ephemera, And Cosmo D has been asked about their style. People have gravitated towards references like David Lynch, but Cosmo D replied that they felt more Tom Waits than David Lynch in a Kotaku interview, which I think is a really interesting and funny way to put it, actually, because Tom Waits has a pretty loopy, comical, serious world of a universe throughout all of his music, with characters and a lot of texture and, sticky bars and splinters and strange characters and, scenarios. Tom Waits is full of vibe. And I think that Cosmo D, I can see the connection between those two. It's very playful, it's very textural and fun and rough-edged. So I think it is useful to think of this as a game that is made by someone that is from a music background. The fact that it's set in a club, a lot of people go to clubs, obviously, but if you've worked in clubs, I used to work, the coat check, and I've done stuff with DJing and musicians and all that stuff. There is a hell of a lot of wheels grinding away behind the dance floor in a club. And in Club Low, you will visit the security room with the CCTV cameras, and you will speak to the manager. You will speak to the cynical barman. You will go into the various different backstage parts of the club. And it does seem to be made by someone that has a little fondness and a little bit of familiarity with that whole setup. And that kind of bleeds through in not just the scenario itself, but in all the characters that you meet, the dialogue that they will say, and just the vibe of the place. There's a lot of bric-a-brac in the back. There's a lot of, moulding fruit and strange pictures and bric-a-brac furniture that is just sort of thrown together, all very careworn, all very well used. So the idea of the whole vibe of Cosmo D's output as being super musically orientated, both culturally and in sensibility, is, I think, a useful starting point for talking about this game. But the game itself begins when your character comes out of a subway into a lo-fi cityscape. It is nighttime. There is a starry sky flexing strangely in the background. There are buildings all around you with fly posters on them. You're on a grimy pavement. Basically, it's the street outside of the eponymous Club Low, the nightclub where the game is set. And right off the bat, the art style really sings, I think. It's like a scrapbook of assets that don't necessarily look like they belong together, which makes them feel surreal. I think the real trick of surrealism is putting things together that just shouldn't be together. And there's a lot of that in this game. It's laced through the game. It's like a collage of bits and pieces. And it ends up having the vibe of a sort of a digital fever dream kind of thing. And that extends throughout the assets, the art style, and also the animation is really funny. For example, if you dance, your character will sort of raise their hands into the air and do little devil horns and then just act like a mannequin that is being weirdly shaken. They're all so stiff and strange. All the NPCs have this funny, intentional, mannequin-like quality about them. Really odd behaviors and really stiff movements that just come off as comical in a really good way. And I think in other games, unnatural animation might be something that catches your eye and takes you out of the moment. But in this game, it's all part of the charm. It's all folded into what's fun about the game. It's not trying to represent reality. It is representing just a sort of dream space where the game is set. It's very intentionally this way, and you find yourself laughing with it rather than being taken out of the moment, if that makes sense. The camera cuts and changes from scene to scene in a way that you will know if you've played games like Resident Evil or the old point-and-click games, where sometimes you're walking towards the camera, past it, sometimes the camera's above you. So it's directed, and I think it's well done, it's well set up. None of that accidentally clicking back into a door that you just came from, that kind of thing. It's always very clear. I would say it's well directed, in the kind of the camera use is really good here. And after you come out of the subway, you meet your handler who is sitting in a car. And they give you a pizza delivery guy disguise and your main mission, which is to get inside of Club Low, to find an agent who is in the VIP area with the big boss, and to extract them. And how you go about that is really up to you. The mission goes into a little log that you can open at any time. There is a little stats sheet that you can open at any time to examine your character. And that's it, really. You're out and into the game. You've got your scenario. It's over quite quickly. There's no massive tutorialization, or at least the tutorialization that there is folded into the game very well, so you don't feel like you're in the learner area you're just outside the club, and the game uses that to teach you some basics. For example, you can hold down Shift to highlight some interactable objects, such as a dumpster, a puddle, posters, the long queue of people trying to get into Club Low, or the bouncer who is standing at the door. So it's totally free of pixel hunting, which I think is one of the banes of point-and-click games. My two bugbears with point-and-clicks are pixel hunting, which is solved through that use of the modern object highlighting mechanic, and moon logic, which is where you have to, combine the monkey tail with the chip fat to create a lollipop that you can tempt the guard with or whatever. And this game contains none of that stuff, none of that over-complex, obscure item combinations, no pixel hunting, and no really difficult puzzles. Like, it's always pretty apparent what you have to do. And I think that really helps here. I think in classic point-and-click games, or in the point-and-click genre, the emphasis on difficult puzzles actually just ends up slowing you down. It's a game genre that is from an age before we had walkthroughs. So, you might go away and ruminate on it like it's a crossword clue. In crosswords too, you're waiting for the solution the next day if you're doing it in a newspaper. And I think that point-and-click games perhaps thrive on the fact that their players cannot access an easy solution. But now that we can, if we get bored or frustrated, it's just much easier to look it up and move through the game when we've got 20 more games we want to play. So point and click was of that time for some specific reasons, I think. And the fact that this game doesn't lean into difficult puzzles, moon logic, pixel hunting, all of those things that slow you down and bring you to a halt. It actually leans into a propulsive style of gameplay where any obstacle is surmountable. And if it isn't, then there are 10 other things that you could be doing. So I think that this is a really, really positive and lively, enlivening of the point-and-click genre, which is something of a dusty relic at this point. So you can highlight objects or people, you can talk to them, or if it's an object, you can examine them. Some will just give you flavor text, like tell you what is on a poster, or an odd encounter. For example, if you interact with the puddle, you can stare into it and have a little existential crisis. You can drink it to see what happens. You get options. You can reach into the puddle to see if anything's there. And it's the same with the queue. There are different ways to navigate the queue. Maybe you want to talk your way through. Maybe you want to push in physically. Maybe you want to distract everyone with your crazy dancing. And whenever there is a choice like that, these are skill checks that turn into dice roll encounters. It's a really cool system, and it's the main mechanic of Betrayal at Club Low. And I'm going to try and explain this dice roll system to you. It's a little bit like the difficulty that I've had in the past attempting to explain card game rules. There's a lot of deck builders out there, and trying to talk through the rules seems like a much less intuitive way of understanding it than actually just playing it. The dice rolls are a little bit like that, but I'm going to try and give you a feel for what they are like. So the dice game is the core of the gameplay here. It's really, really fun. If you've played Disco Elysium, you might recognize that system here. Disco Elysium itself is obviously inspired by tabletop RPGs and that kind of thing, tabletop games, where you have skills that you can increase over time, and you have a dice roll, the outcome of which is measured against your skill set. So there's a little bit of role play, inspiration in here. And the skill checks are really, really fun. You choose which skill you're going to employ for any specific situation. For example, if you want to get past the bouncer and get into the club, you can roll against your physique to try and barge past him or take him down. You can roll against your deception to try and talk your way past them by pretending that you are delivering a pizza. You can roll against your wits to try and charm them with a joke. You can roll against your music knowledge to present yourself as a head that should be let inside the club because you know what's up. And you can increase these stats over time. So there is a mini role-playing game in this game. You can increase your wit, physique, deception, wisdom, music knowledge. You earn money every time you partake in a battle, and you use that money to invest into your skill set and become the kind of character that you want to be. And that has a big effect on the gameplay. You find yourself gravitating towards the kind of skill checks that will be against skills that you have decided to invest in. So very early on, I decided to invest in my deception. That was the main one I decided to go with. I thought I'm going to be talking my way into a club. I'm going to be talking my way past bouncers. I'm going to be dealing with gangsters. I think I want to be able to trick them, to deceive them with my words. So that was the thing that I invested in most, and that meant that often if you're presented with a variety of skill checks you can choose from, then I tended to lean into the deception ones because I knew that I had the best possible chance of winning. So you're constantly making small decisions in the game based on which of your skills you've decided to invest in, because you're looking at the numbers. You can see the kind of maximum dice rolls that you can get based on your skills. You can see what your enemy, what you're up against, and so you're constantly weighing it up in your head. Like, which one should I go for? Should I go for the physique? Should I go for the wit, etc.? But there are lots of quirks and wrinkles in that system that make it even more interesting. And my brain just really drank up this, like, looking at numbers and making quick decisions on stats, and then a game of chance to see if you've made the right decision. Because there are status effects which can be positive or negative. For example, if you've recently failed a physique encounter, you might get a tired status effect, which adds an extra dice to your hand for the next roll that you make, which has a negative effect on it. Like, it might take 2 or 1 or 0 off your dice roll. So it's this little chaotic addition to the system. It's like another wrinkle in the dice roll system. Sometimes they're positive ones, like if you pass a hacking challenge by using your intellect, then you might get like a feeling clever. And that means that the next time that you roll against that specific skill, then you get a +1 or a +2 dice. That's like an extra dice in your cup when you roll. So all of your skills are at any given time involved in quite a dynamic situational moment where some skills you might not use even though they have high ceiling because you've got 2 negative effects attached to that skill. But those negative effects and status effects, they only last 1 turn, so they fall away, and then you end up with new ones. So it's really, really dynamic, ever-changing system that really, really got me addicted and engaged throughout this whole game. And that's without even mentioning the fact that you get these stupid, strange, really funny pizza dice. The pizza dice are additional dice. They're unlockable. If you find a pizza oven, you can unlock a new dice that is permanently added to your cup. So whenever you roll, you're going to get this additional dice. They're customizable. So you'll see the pizza laid out that you're about to put into the oven. It has 6 spaces. You can add ingredients to it. For example, basil, which might give you extra money. It's like +$2. Mozzarella, which might multiply the money dice, like a ×2 or a ×4. And different ingredients, like one of which is a reroll that will allow you to re-roll one of your opponent's dice, which is one of the most powerful and useful things in the game. And then you bake this pizza, and that bakes into a pizza dice that you then roll, and you might roll basil and get more money. You might roll mozzarella and get multiplication on something. You might get a re-roll that tips the balance of an encounter. So there's lots of wrinkles in the dice roll system, and I think make it really, really complex, really, really interesting. My brain just drank it up. It is a bit Disco Elysium-like in this regard, but it's a bit more loose. It's a bit more fluid. It doesn't feel life or death when you're rolling. Like in Disco Elysium, sometimes you'll be locked out of it for another day before you can come back and play it. So you're kind of locked out of that entire storyline. Like if you're trying to force a door open, for example, you can't just do it again. In this game, you can just do it again. You can just try again. But you're going to have some negative effects from the last failed encounter, probably. So it kind of encourages you to use different skills. Also, you can upgrade your skills on the fly. So you can look at the shape of a roll and think, well, I wish I had a little bit more invested in my intellect. You can just open up your profile and just throw more money into your intellect and try again. So it's a really, really mobile, sort of nimble system here. And I love that this game of chance that lies at the heart of this game is just so compelling that it just keeps you playing. Even when everything else is so good, it's just great. It really is. And to make it even better, the outcomes that you will get from your dice rolls are often just hilarious. For example, you will meet the DJ, you'll meet the crowd. You can try and impress them with your dancing. You can try and pickpocket them. If you talk your way past a security guard, you'll meet the DJ and you can pry into their affairs by using your observation to observe their technique. Or to probe them and question them with your different skill checks. You will meet the DJ's manager in the green room who's counting money, if you can get it open, of course. You'll meet the chef who's preparing a complex recipe for the VIP area that you're trying to get to. The crowd on the dance floor, the seen-it-all barman, the harried club manager who knows that various nefarious things are going on and will clue you into some of them. There are various gruff security guards that you'll have to talk your way past, the coat check girl, and all of that kind of stuff. They all have their own angles going on. There's something going on with all of them. There is not a single bland encounter in this game. They're all really, really fun. And as you start to untangle all of these small stories, you find your way through this utterly bizarre clubland world. You uncover various subplots and details that will help you on your way or hinder you. And inch you closer to your objective. Some of the early skill checks are out of your league, but as you go through the club, finding stuff, pickpocketing people, powering up, having encounters that are going to give you money that you can then invest into your skills and power up your dice. And as you have more manageable dice roll encounters and loop through this whole labyrinth of the club, like the backstage, the garage, the kitchen, the CCTV room, all of the different grimy corridors and dance floors that make up this building, you end up looping quite naturally back to those difficult early skill checks because it's very well laid out. There are various ways through the club that will bring you out into familiar places that you've been in before, like the back of the dance hall, when before you were only at the front. And you'll remember, you'll be like, oh, I'm here again. It's like this funny feeling that you get when you're actually walking through a building. So I think that the design of this world it's really well put together. And like everything in this game, I think it's just well judged. For example, the funny graphics, the ever-evolving soundtrack of the club, which we've been listening to as I'm speaking, it's just pulsing the whole time and changing from room to room. The really smart level design that brings you out where you feel like you need to be. All of the funny conversations that you have that plug into your overall goal and the whole scenario and world. It just works. I think I really, really enjoyed navigating this world. I really, really enjoyed navigating this game. I was smiling throughout the game. It's just very cool. Everything is singing in harmony in this game. Like all of the different things that I'm talking about just seem to fall into an accord that adds up to more than the sum of its parts. I never hit any walls with it. And I think that is something that can really kill a point-and-click adventure, is when you just come to a dead halt, or when you find yourself looking up several puzzle solutions in a row because you're just stumped and bored and you want to get through it. None of that in this game. Like, it's propulsive, it's pushing you along. You never hit a brick wall. There is always something interesting that can happen. I think that is perhaps a slight input from Disco Elysium, an influence from Disco Elysium. Although this is a much lighter and more comedic experience than Disco Elysium, I think that some of the decisions do mirror that game a little bit. And I think that all of this effortlessness, that's the sum of all of those decisions, for me as a player, was a testament to just a very well-designed video game that seems to understand what's fun. Like, this is a game that understands what is fun about the game, and it just gives it to you. And while there are like moments of challenge, like if you don't get through a laser door, maybe there is a back door, maybe there's a window you can climb out of, maybe there is a ladder you can discover, maybe there is someone you can talk to who will open it for you. It never felt punitive, and it always felt like it wanted me to have a good time. So let's go through some of the upsides and downsides of this game. I think the main upside for me is the atmosphere of it, the vibe of it. It's incredibly strong, and this is just a whole orchestra singing in concert in this game. It's the great music, really interesting variety of like house and beats and pulsing synths, bits of cello like we're listening to right now, just unexpectedly gliding in and out. The visual style of the game is really compelling. It is a patchwork of bizarre lo-fi stuff that just feels like a back room full of weird old furniture, except the video game version, where it's just a lot of different crunchy, interesting assets that are all thrown in together. The characters, they're all really good. They have plots, they have angles. And I have to say as well, like when you talk to a security guard and if you persuade them to leave, the way that characters exit the environment is hilarious. They point into the sky, they get these funny flames coming out of their feet, and they just blast off and leave with a smashing sound coming from above them. It's hilarious. Every time it happens, it's funny. And it's also a very economical decision. You don't have to animate the character walking out of the environment or just fade to black and fade back in again the way that a lot of games do to save the animation. This one just has a very funny solution to that problem, and I think it's, that's just one small example of many where funny solutions have been found to video game problems. It's full of nice touches, it really is. I think the whole game is packed with nice touches, little things here and there, little bits of graphics, the music itself, the story, the dialogue that you're going to have, the solutions to problems are bizarre. The places where effort has been put in, for example, if you want to jump over the bar, and if you manage to do it, you're going to get a really funny animation when you actually do that. I would also say that the dice game is excellent at powering up your skills so that even when you lose, it doesn't feel bad. Like the status effects add an element of dynamism and chaos to the whole thing. So no dice roll is going to be the same twice because you're going to have different statuses. Maybe it's going to make you test yourself against a different skill altogether. The fact that upgrading your skills is very loose as well, that you can do it at any time. If you're about to roll against a skill that you've barely used, I barely used my wisdom throughout the game, but towards the end it became quite useful, so I just had a lot of money left over and I pumped it all into wisdom and was able to pass a skill check. So the fact that it's also fast and fluid just seems really good. It just hook, line and sinkered my game of brain. It really did. I loved weighing up what skill I was going to roll against, using the money, using all the different things in game. Like there are things that you can do in a dice roll battle skill check. You'll get multiple re-rolls, and being able to re-roll the opponent's dice, being able to gamble on re-rolling one of my own. It was really good. The dice game is great. Also the runtime in this game, it's good and short, I would say. I think I got through this one in 2.5 hours. I went back in and finished it off looking for a different outcome. So it's a good short game too, if you like short games. As for the downsides of this game, there really aren't many. I mean, it does have multiple outcomes. You can see when you finish that there are 12 different multiple outcomes. So you can go back in and try and get a different ending. I did that, but I found myself roughly playing the same way. Like the choices that I made ended up being the choices that felt natural to me. So I guess you could go through and do like an opposite playthrough where you just pick all the things that you didn't pick last time. Sometimes I have done that in games. I did that in Tron, really just to test the game and see if you really do get different outcomes or if it's like a simulation of that. So it would be interesting to go back through this game again and just see how different the outcomes are. I played through the latter half of it again and ended up in roughly the same place. And that was from making decisions that felt kind of optimal and right to me. So I could do a contrarian playthrough and go through it again. And I might well, because I had such a good time with this game. That's really the only downside that I have, and it's not even really a downside. It's just a very good game. It's quite unlike anything that I've played in many ways. It's smart, it's funny, it's stylish. It has a lot of edge to it, but it never feels like it's edgelording at you or being annoying, and that's not easy to do. It's just genuinely cool and fun. And playing this game did make me think of the Double Fine Adventure, because it is a point and click game and it's just such a funny addition to that canon. Because in Double Fine Adventure, of course, Tim Schafer is lamenting the death of the genre, and this feels like the kind of contemporary rework of what that genre is and what it does and how it feels that Tim Schafer would be fascinated by, I think. It feels like it's blowing the cobwebs off the genre. It's the best point and click that I've played for literally years. And Disco Elysium is more of an RPG than a point and click. This is lighter, it's funnier, it feels more like a point and click game than an RPG. And it's a great game to carry the torch for that genre. It really does feel like the rework that genre needed. I can see why it garnered so many votes at the IGF festival. It has the kind of oddball eccentricity and creativity that I think a lot of people want. That's why we like indie games, because you get something a bit different. And this is certainly that. That's Betrayal at Club Low. So I hope you enjoyed that review, Betrayal at Club Low, the IGF winner. I'm really glad that it did win that award. I'm really glad that I went back and played it. I had a really good time with this one. In fact, I think if I had played it in the year that it came out, it might have scraped into the mentions of my Games of the Year list, so it's a real shame to have not played it. There have been a couple like that actually this year. I felt like Melatonin was another late year release. It came out in December, when I was already thinking towards Christmas and preparing to travel, so I only played it in January, and I think that would have gone in too. So there have been a few really good late year releases in 2022 that I'm really glad that I came back to, and this is certainly one of them. If you have played it, I would like to hear from you. You can find me on Twitter at Gaming in the Wild. You can of course join the Discord if you become a patron at patreon.com/gaminginthewild. I also have YouTube and Twitch and Instagram. You can find me anywhere really, but Twitter is the main place that I talk. For some reason, still it is. And I will be back next week with another episode. Maybe it will be about Storyteller. Maybe it will be about Minato, A Walk Through Life. Maybe it will be about The Curious Case of Benedict Fox, or Jedi's games. Who knows? It could be something else completely. But I will be back next week with a new episode. Take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for listening, and bye-bye for now.